Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon McAleer, and today I'll be interviewing Mr. Hickey, a member of our advisory board. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Brandon. How are you?
Good. Would you be able to just briefly summarize your career and your current position with the department, and then we'll get into some questions about your experience and advice for future students?
Sure. I spent 40 years in the Department of Defense. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. I worked as a civilian for NSA for 13 years. Some other number in there, 17 years or so with Army intelligence. And then I finished up with a number of 4 or 5 years as a contractor. And most of the time I was working in SIGINT organizations, but when I was in Germany with the Army intelligence, that was a human organization. So I kind of spanned quite a few different categories and over the years.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I think we'll start with kind of what you just summarized, but could you walk me through your career trajectory and how your role evolved over time through the wide range of positions you've had?
Sure. Initially, like many of my colleagues and friends and whatnot, we were caught up in Vietnam, the Vietnam draft and whatnot. I was lucky enough to get into the Air Force, and at the time, computers were brand new, and they sent me to a tech school to learn how to program computers. They were relatively new at the time, and it was an assignment that I did not anticipate, nor that I could even think that I would get into. And they sent me to this big office building at Fort Meade, Maryland, called the National Security Agency. Had no idea what it was. I just knew it was big, and it took a long time to get my security clearance, and I got inside, and that's when it all began. Once I separated from the service, the Vietnam War was still going on. It was 1972, and they were hiring former service members for as civilians because I had a clearance and because I had the experience. And I was lucky enough to get a job, and I parlayed it into 36 more years.
Great. Well, thank you. And then what is your current position in relation with Coastal's Intelligence and Security Studies Department?
Well, I'm on the board of the Senior Intelligence Advisory Board, and we want to. Our primary goal, of course, is to mentor students like yourself into a career in intelligence, law enforcement, or some active aspect of security for our nation.
Great. Thank you. Moving on, what was one of the most challenging assignments you worked on, and how did you navigate it?
Well, the most challenging was when I was a chief of staff for a Navy captain. We were at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and he was the chief of operations. So I was a chief of staff, the chief of operations. And he was just a very difficult person to work for. He's very demanding. He thought he was controlling an aircraft carrier. And I would see him first thing every morning and the last thing every night. And he was just a, a difficult type A personality to work for. And I think that was the most challenging. Every other job I loved. I really did. I really loved every job I had, except for those 2 years that I spent with him was just a little bit more than I could take every day.
Yeah. And what was your best piece of advice for navigating, maybe if students might not be in that exact situation, but something similar where it's challenging?
Right. Well, it's very important to know your boss and to know who you work for and what his personality type is. Years ago, when I was an intern at NSA, we took courses in the Myers-Briggs test, which talked about personality types. It was very informative and very useful. And you have to know the kind of person you're working for so that you can survive every day as yourself, but also to satisfy his requirements so that you can do the mission.
Great, thank you. And then going now into what people have misconceptions about intelligence work, of course, without getting into classified details, what would you say is a common misconception that people have, possibly even new students joining our program, that they have about intelligence work?
Well, I think the biggest misconception that everybody has is everybody in the business is James Bond,
Yeah.
and it's just not the case. They are so few and far between. They probably are less than 1% of the entire intelligence agency. Most of them are analysts, data analysts, Intel analysts, et cetera, that just trudge through paperwork every day or through data, um, and understanding your target set, learning your target set, and then analyzing it and reporting on it. But that's the biggest misconception people have. It really is a not very exciting job.
I would definitely say that that's a common misconception, especially as like freshmen and new students coming into our
Sure.
program. I think our department does a good job of explaining that this is an analytical job for the vast
Yeah.
majority of people, and that's what you're getting into for this career.
Right. Right.
What skills or traits do you think are the most important for someone entering the field today? Obviously, as an analyst or something like that, that's not doing that James Bond work.
Right. Well, I've found that the two most critical skills. Number one is a soft skill, and that's public speaking. If you can get up in front of people and brief your target set, brief your mission, whatever it is, you are a standout in the crowd. Believe me, less than 10% of Intel people enjoy briefing. They're just they just don't like it. So if you can do that, if you acquire, develop public speaking, that's very important. And the other one is critical thinking. You have to be able to abandon the preconceived notions that you have in order to look at the data and find out, is it true? It may be true because you already believe it, but look at the data, examine the data. So critical thinking is extremely important.
What are the most significant security challenges you think that we'll face as a nation in the next decade?
Oh, number one for me is AI, artificial intelligence. In my mind, there's no question about it. Because with AI, you never know what's real.
Mhm.
Never really know if it's real or not. It can be concealed so well today, and they're just making it better every year. Uh, Not every year, every week, it seems to be getting better. And I was just listening to a program today, and they were talking about whether or not they're going to need programmers anymore because AI might program itself after a while because it got smarter than the people.
It's a
So
scary
I do
thought.
think AI is the most challenging security threat. From a international perspective, China. Traditionally, and they've been doing this for quite a while, it's copyright infringement and just stealing intellectual property.
Mhm.
Intellectual property is property, it's money, and it's a drain on the economy because they're really stealing the money. And I see that as the biggest. I don't see them militarily as a threat. They're too smart for that. They know that we could probably beat them. It would be an ugly, ugly fight, but we could probably beat them. So I don't think they'll ever get to that point, or certainly not in the near term. But I think that they are very happy stealing our property and developing things on their own based upon what they have taken from us.
What motivated you to join the advisory board for this program?
Well, I've always loved teaching. And when I was overseas, I taught with the University of Maryland at night while I was working during the day for the Army. And I just love being with young students and teaching them and trying to impart some wisdom, a little bit that I have. And when I got here, we retired to Myrtle Beach, and I sought out Dr. Fitsanakis to just talk to him about it. And that led one thing to another and to another. And years later, I was invited to be on the board.
Great. Well, thank you. We're glad you're here. And then finally, kind of the culmination of this interview and the important discussion about what advice do you have for students who want to make the most of their time in this program?
Well, being in a classroom is one thing, but what you do outside the classroom is much more important, in my view. Um, Extracurricular activities like the Op Center, the Intel Center downstairs, and the Center for Applied Intelligence, being involved in that, the Chanticleer Brief, all of those things, they're very important. You will get more out of them. Well, I can't say that. You'll get more out of them than you will out of some of your classes because they're real. They're actually real. They were set up to give you a real world experience. And I truly believe they do. As you know, you've been invited to several places around, in particular to Fort Gordon, where I used to work,
Yes,
the
sir.
National Security Agency, to brief them. You literally briefed NSA. I mean, nobody does that. Nobody does that, and you guys did it, and I couldn't be prouder of you. It was wonderful.
Well, I mean, I think on behalf of the department, thank you. We definitely appreciate it. And I'll absolutely agree. All those opportunities are definitely a lot more hands-on than, the limitations of what can be taught in a classroom. So it's definitely
Right.
a great benefit the center provides for students. And that's all we have for today, sir. Thank you for joining us, and
Okay.
we appreciate your continued work with the department.
Okay, Brandon. Thank you very much.